The black maid thought it was just another job, another routine cleaning shift in a mansion far beyond her world. But the moment she stepped into the grand hall, everything changed. The cameras flashed, the flowers smelled sweeter than life itself, and a crowd cheered. Yet none of it felt real. Until the CEO leaned close, his voice cold, and whispered the words that would shatter her life. "You're legally mine now." Hey, this is the story of fear, betrayal, love, and courage. And before we dive into this story, I want to hear from you. Wherever you're watching from, drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing how this story reaches hearts all over the world. It reminds us we're all connected, no matter where life finds us. So go ahead, say hello, and let me know where you're tuning in from. Naliah Benton, 24 years old, stood at the edge of the glittering ballroom with her hands trembling against the smooth fabric of her borrowed maid's dress. She had cleaned rooms in hotels, scrubbed floors in office buildings, and served drinks at weddings. But she had never stepped into anything like this. The marble looked like it had been carved for royalty. Crystal lights poured down from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and everyone here carried themselves like they owned half the world. She believed this night was nothing more than a strange, themed event she had been hired for, something the rich did for entertainment. She was told she would be paid triple to play this stand-in bride for a fake wedding demonstration. She had laughed at first, confused but relieved for the extra cash. She needed it. Rent was late again, and the landlord had already started leaving notes on her door. But the moment she stepped into the ballroom, she felt something was wrong. Too many eyes were on her. Too many whispers followed her every move. The air carried a heavy expectation she didn't understand. Then she saw him, Cashin Rourke, the billionaire CEO whose face she had only ever seen on magazine covers in the grocery aisle. Everyone said he was cold, brilliant, and untouchable. Tonight he wore a black tuxedo like it was a second skin, his dark hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable. He walked toward her with a slow, steady confidence that made her heartbeat slam in her ears. "Miss Benton," he said softly, stopping inches from her. His voice was smooth, but carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "You look perfect." Naliah swallowed hard. Thank you, sir. They told me this was all pretend. A fake wedding showcase." "Right." Cashin didn't answer. Instead, he lifted her hand gently but firmly, placing it on his arm as if she belonged there. As if this was always meant to happen. "I'll explain everything soon," he murmured. Her stomach twisted. Explain what? But the music started before he could answer, soft strings echoing through the hall. Guests turned to face them. The officiant stepped forward. Cameras flashed. Naliah froze as the realization hit her like a punch to the chest. This didn't look fake. This didn't feel fake. And Cashin's grip on her arm was no longer gentle. It was urgent. "Walk with me," he whispered. "Please." Confused, scared, and surrounded by hundreds of staring eyes, she let him lead her down the aisle. Every step made her breath thinner. The officiant spoke words she barely processed. Cashin never looked away from her, his gaze intense, almost desperate. When the vows ended, he leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. "You're legally mine now." Every muscle in her body locked. And no, this wasn't real. This was supposed to be fake. But before she could pull away, the doors behind them slammed shut. Two tall security guards moved in, blocking every exit. Naliah felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. And then the lights flickered, followed by a sudden scream from the back of the ballroom. If Naliah's journey has already grabbed your heart, don't forget to hit like. It really helps me keep sharing stories like this. And if you want to follow every twist, turn, and dramatic moment, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss a single chapter. Share this video too, so someone else can experience the suspense, the emotion, and the courage of Naliah's story. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories alive. Before the marble floors and crystal chandeliers, before the suffocating silence of that impossible wedding, Naliah Benton had lived in a world that never stopped reminding her of everything she didn't have. She grew up in a tiny apartment on the east side of Dayton, Ohio, a place where the walls were thin, the nights loud, and the dreams small, because life rarely gave you room for anything bigger. Naliah was the second of three sisters, all raised by their mother, a woman who worked 2 cleaning jobs and still came home smiling, even when her feet ached so badly she couldn't stand without holding the counter. Their mother always told them, "We don't have much, but we have heart. And if you've got heart, you've got a fighting chance." Naliah believed that more than anything. She clung to it on days when kids at school mocked her hand-me-down clothes, or when teachers looked surprised that she answered questions correctly, as if intelligence had a zip code. By 16, she was already working, cleaning motels after school, babysitting for neighbors, doing whatever kept the lights on. Those early jobs taught her one thing. People saw what they wanted to see. Some customers spoke to her as if she were invisible. Others stared too long, their eyes filled with pity or something worse. But every time she felt small, she reminded herself of her dreams. She wanted more. Not to be rich, she just wanted safety. Stability. A life where she didn't check her bank balance with her heart in her throat. She had planned to attend community college, maybe study nursing. She even got accepted. But when her mother fell ill and couldn't work, her plans folded instantly. There was no resentment, just the quiet ache of disappointment she carried like a secret. Naliah pushed everything aside and took full-time cleaning gigs, telling her sisters they didn't need to worry, that she had it handled. She always said it with a smile, even when the exhaustion clawed at her bones. And still, she believed her life would change one day. Somehow. She didn't know how or when, but she trusted that life couldn't stay one color forever. At 24, she lived in a small, worn apartment with leaking pipes and a landlord who raised the rent twice a year just because he could. She worked for a cleaning agency that sent her to wealthy homes and luxury hotels, spaces so beautiful they felt unreal. Sometimes she paused to admire things she couldn't afford even in dreams. But she never let jealousy eat at her. She took it as a reminder of what she wanted for her future. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, after a long shift scrubbing an office floor until her knees throbbed, she sat on the bus scrolling through her phone, trying not to think about the overdue rent notice folded in her pocket. That's when the email appeared. Subject: exclusive event opportunity, high compensation. At first, she thought it was a scam. But when she clicked, the message was short and strangely specific. "We've reviewed your employee file. We'd like to offer you a one-night cleaning and hosting role for a private event. Pay $3,500. Dress provided. Transportation included. Reply to confirm availability." Her breath caught. $3,500. For one night. She blinked, reread it twice, then 3 more times. It sounded unreal, too good to be true, but the agency logo at the bottom looked legitimate. And the return email matched their domain. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she tapped reply, typed one word, "Yes," and hit send. The message that came back made her stomach flutter with something she didn't yet recognize. "Your driver will arrive tomorrow at 6 p.m. The following evening, the Blacktown car pulled up outside Naliah's building with a smoothness that didn't match anything in her world. She stepped out of her apartment holding her small purse, the only one she owned that didn't have a broken zipper, and froze when she saw the driver, an older man in a dark suit, standing beside the open door as if she were somebody important. Somebody expensive. "Miss Benton?" he asked gently. She nodded, trying not to stare at her reflection in the shiny door. Her hair was neat, her dress plain but clean, her nervous smile trembling at the edges. "Please, come in. We're expected." Expected. The word hummed through her chest like a warning. The car ride was silent except for the soft hum of the engine. Mansions passed outside the tinted windows, each one bigger than the last. When they pulled up to the Rourke estate, a sprawling modern mansion with endless glass walls, her breath stalled. It looked more like a museum than a home, the kind of place people whispered about. Inside, she was greeted by a woman in a crisp white suit who looked her over quickly, not unkindly, but with a surgeon's precision. "This way," the woman said. "Mr. Rourke wants to meet you before the event begins." "Mr. Rourke?" Naliah repeated, trying to sound casual, but her voice cracked slightly. "Yes, Cashin Rourke, the host, the billionaire, the man whose companies were always in the news, the man whose face looked carved from frost and ambition." The woman led her down a hallway so long it felt like a tunnel, then pushed open a set of double doors. The room inside was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a large desk, and shelves filled with books that looked untouched. And he was there, standing with his back to her. Cashin Rourke. Naliah wasn't sure what she expected, but it wasn't this. He turned slowly, and the world seemed to slow with him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that studied her as if she were something fragile he wasn't sure he should touch. The intensity in his gaze made her throat tighten. "Miss Benton," he said. His voice was cool, controlled, each word placed with purpose. "You're early." I didn't want to be late," she replied, her voice small against the size of him. He nodded, but his expression didn't soften. He walked closer, stopping just short of her space. His cologne smelled like cedar and something darker, something that made her pulse jump. "Tonight's event is delicate," he continued. "I need certainty. No mistakes. Can you manage that?" His tone wasn't cruel, but it held no warmth either. He looked at her the way someone might examine a tool, checking for flaws, testing its reliability. "I'll do my best," she whispered, wishing her hands weren't shaking. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Something unreadable. "You'll change in the room down the hall," he said. "They've prepared everything you need." "Prepared everything?" Her stomach tightened again. "Yes, sir," she managed. He turned away dismissively, already done with the conversation. She stepped out of the room, her breath shaking in her chest. The hallway felt colder now, quieter. She meant to leave, but then she heard his voice again, sharp, low, speaking to someone on the phone. "She's perfect." Naliah froze, and every part of her knew he hadn't meant it as a compliment. Naliah changed in silence, the soft fabric of the provided uniform feeling too smooth, too expensive, too intentional. It wasn't like any maid outfit she'd worn before. This one fit her body perfectly, as if someone had taken her measurements without asking. The white blouse hugged her shoulders, the black skirt flowing just enough to look elegant rather than practical. It felt wrong to wear something so carefully chosen for a job that was supposed to be simple. When she stepped back into the hallway, 2 staff members were waiting, both dressed in matching gray uniforms, both staring at her with an odd mixture of curiosity and something like pity. Or was it fear? "This way, Miss Benton," one of them said quickly, avoiding eye contact. They led her through the mansion as if she were fragile glass. Everyone seemed to step aside when she passed, whispering to each other in low voices. Conversations fell silent the moment she came near. It reminded her of the way people sometimes treated animals they thought might bite. Careful, cautious, expectant. She tried to smile, tried to ask where she was supposed to start cleaning, but answers were vague and oddly polite. "Oh, don't worry about the heavy work tonight," one woman murmured, hands twisting nervously. "You're special." "Special?" Naliah echoed. The woman's eyes widened like she had said too much. "I just mean, you're assigned to the private wing tonight." Mr. Rourke insisted. Insisted. The word made Naliah's stomach tighten. Why would a billionaire CEO single out one maid for anything? As they guided her deeper into the mansion, the energy shifted. The grand halls grew quieter, dimmer, colder. Doors lined the hallway, each dark wood, each locked. "This area is restricted except for you," another staff member whispered. "Everything's prepared." Naliah frowned. Prepared for what? Neither answered. They walked away quickly, leaving her standing alone in a hallway that felt too empty, too expectant, too still. She moved from door to door cautiously until she reached the one marked with a silver plaque. "Private Suite. Authorized entry only." Her name was printed underneath. A chill swept over her skin. She hadn't given them permission to use her name. She hadn't even told them her size, yet the uniform fit perfectly. And now an entire suite was marked as if it belonged to her. Her fingers trembled as she turned the handle. The door clicked open. The room inside was beautiful, soft white walls, gold accents, floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with evening light. But nothing inside made sense. The air was filled with the faint scent of roses. An enormous vanity table held brushes, makeup, and jewelry laid out neatly. A box of new shoes sat beneath the window, all in her size. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she stepped further in. Then she saw it. A mannequin stood in the center of the room, draped in silk and lace. A wedding dress, pure white, sparkling under the chandelier. Her size, her shape, her name stitched into the label. A wave of cold panic slammed into her chest. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over her own feet. This wasn't a cleaning job. This wasn't an event she could walk away from. Someone had planned this. For her. Behind her, the door creaked, then clicked shut on its own, locking her inside with the dress that waited like a prophecy. Naliah stared at the wedding dress until her vision blurred. Every instinct told her to run, but the door behind her remained locked, and the silence of the private suite pressed against her ears like a warning. She didn't understand what Cashin Rourke wanted with her. She didn't understand why this mansion felt less like a workplace and more like a trap dressed in luxury. Still shaking, she backed away from the mannequin and reached for the door handle, only for it to turn from the other side. Cashin stood there. He filled the doorway with his tall frame, his expression unreadable in the dim light. His eyes flicked from her face to the dress behind her. Something deep and dark passed through his gaze, too quick to name. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "What is this? Why is there a dress in my size? Why does this room have my name on it?" He stepped inside slowly, shutting the door behind him. The air grew tighter. "It's complicated," he murmured. "That's not an answer." He exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. For the first time, she saw something she never expected from a man like him: uncertainty. He walked toward the window, the tension in his shoulders sharp enough to snap. "When I was a kid," he began, voice low, "my father built everything you see here. The money, the company, the power. And he used all of it like a cage. For me, for my mother." He swallowed hard. She didn't survive it. Naliah's heart stilled. The sadness in his voice was raw, unpolished, nothing like the cold man she first met. "He told me once that love was a weakness, that if people knew what you cared about, they'd use it to destroy you." Cashin's hands trembled slightly. I believed him. Too much. The room felt smaller now, as if his confession pulled the walls closer. "Cashin," she whispered before she could stop herself. He stiffened at the sound of his name on her lips, turning to look at her. But the moment he met her gaze, something shifted. His breath hitched, and his eyes darted to the door, then to the window, then back to her. His chest rose and fell too fast. He wasn't calm anymore. He was panicking. "Are you okay?" she asked, taking a careful step forward. He shook his head, pressing a hand to his chest. "No, no, not again." Before she could think, he staggered backward, bumping into the desk. Papers scattered across the floor. His breathing turned shallow, his pupils blown wide with fear. The powerful, controlled CEO now looked like a man drowning. "Cashin," she said softly, edging closer. "You're having a panic attack." He squeezed his eyes shut like the words hurt. I can't, not tonight. They're watching. They're always watching." "Who?" she demanded. He didn't answer, but the terror in his eyes told her it wasn't imaginary. Naliah reached out carefully, placing a steady hand on his arm. His muscles twitched beneath her touch, but he didn't pull away. Her voice gentled, the same tone she used when calming her little sisters after nightmares. "Breathe with me," she whispered. "Slow. Match me." He tried. Failed. Tried again. And slowly, painfully, his breaths evened out. When his knees buckled, she caught him, guiding him to sit on the edge of the bed. He rested his elbows on his knees, head bowed, hair falling into his eyes. For a long moment, they stayed like that, his fears settling into something fragile, hers into something protective. Finally, he looked up at her with an expression she had never seen on anyone, let alone a man like him. "Don't leave," he whispered, voice cracking. "Please, don't leave me." Naliah's breath faltered, because in that moment, the most powerful man she'd ever met wasn't powerful at all. He was broken, and he was begging her. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the private suite, but its warmth didn't reach Naliah. She sat on the edge of the bed, replaying the night before in her mind. The panic attack, Cashin's trembling hands, the way he'd whispered for her not to leave. None of it made sense, and the wedding dress, standing silent in the corner, only made the knot in her stomach tighter. A soft knock broke the quiet. Before she could answer, the door opened and a team of stylists flooded in. 3 women and 1 man, all dressed in sleek black, carrying cases of makeup, jewelry, and curling irons. They moved with the energy of people who had done this 100 times, but their eyes kept darting toward her with a strange mix of awe and tension. "You must be Miss Benton," the lead stylist said with a sharp, glossy smile. "Mr. Rourke wants you prepped immediately." "Prepped?" Naliah repeated. "For what?" "No one has explained anything." The stylist opened a makeup case with a loud click. "For the rehearsal. The demonstration wedding. You know, the event you were hired for." "Right. The fake wedding. The reason she accepted the job." But something inside her whispered that this wasn't fake at all. I thought I was just helping with setup, Naliah said carefully. The stylist laughed lightly. Too lightly. Oh honey, you're the centerpiece. The words made Naliah's skin prickle. Another stylist approached with a long garment bag and unzipped it, revealing the wedding dress from last night. White, shimmering, perfect. Her perfect size. She tried not to step back, but her feet moved on their own. Why is this here? She asked. The woman blinked as if confused by the question. Because you're the real. She stopped abruptly, eyes widening. I mean, the featured bride. For the modeling portion. Naliah stiffened. You were about to say something else. But the stylist turned away quickly, pretending to adjust the dress's train. The dread inside her deepened. They sat her in front of the vanity, brushing her hair, applying makeup, pinning in delicate gold accessories that she didn't ask for and didn't want. Each touch made her feel more like an object being prepared for display. One stylist whispered to another. She's even prettier than the dossier said. The what? Naliah asked. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Nothing, the woman said too quickly. Just paperwork. Paperwork. A dossier. Her size, her name, a room prepared just for her. This wasn't a coincidence. When they finished, they stepped back, murmuring admiration. But the looks they exchanged told a different story. They weren't admiring her beauty. They were admiring how well she fit the plan. Before she could ask more questions, an assistant arrived and guided her down the hall toward a set of double doors leading to a gleaming marble office. Cashin wasn't inside, but the lights were on, and papers were spread across his desk in a tidy but intentional layout. The assistant said, Wait here. Mr. Rourke will join you shortly, and closed the door. Naliah took a shaky breath. Her reflection glowed in the glossy glass, soft waves in her hair, subtle gold makeup, a white dress that shimmered like frost. She didn't look like herself. She looked like someone else's fantasy. While pacing the room, her gaze drifted toward the desk, toward a stack of folders stamped with legal seals. Her name caught her eye. She snatched the top document with trembling fingers. Marriage License Application Applicant 1. Cashin Rourke Applicant 2. Naliah Benton. Her blood turned cold. The second document was worse. Certificate of marriage, pending. Her signature. Her handwriting. Except she had never touched a pen. The room tilted, her heart pounding like a panicked drum. A shadow passed the glass wall. Cashin was coming, and he expected a bride. Cashin entered the marble office with the quiet force of a storm. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to make the air tighten. He froze when he saw her holding the marriage license documents, her hands shaking so badly the papers rustled like leaves in the wind. Naliah, he said softly, but there was no softness in his eyes. Only a heavy, tortured resolve. She held the papers out in front of her. What is this? Why is my name on these? Why is there a certificate with my signature on it? He stepped closer. She stepped back. Cashin, what did you do? His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might lie. Instead, he exhaled slowly, as though the truth weighed 1,000 pounds. I had to, he said. There was no other option. No other option? Her voice cracked. You forged my name. You planned a wedding. You put me in a dress I never asked for. Cashin's expression darkened with something like pain. Not guilt, pain. You don't understand, he whispered. If I explained everything, you wouldn't believe me. And there's no time left to make you understand. She backed toward the door, her pulse pounding, her voice rising. Then make time, because I'm not doing this. Whatever this is, I'm not part of it. His hand shot out, not grabbing her, but blocking her path. Not forcefully, but with a desperation she didn't expect. Please, he said, voice low, breath uneven. Don't walk out that door. Why not? She demanded. The muscles in his throat worked hard, as if he were fighting to swallow words he didn't want to say. Because you're in danger, he finally whispered. And marrying me is the only way to keep you alive. Her heart faltered. What? What are you talking about? Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Heavy, decisive, the kind of footsteps that came when decisions had already been made. Cashin looked toward the door, panic flickering across his face. They're here, he murmured. We have to go? Now. Before she could respond, 2 guards opened the office doors for them. Not with force, but with ceremony. Behind them stood an officiant holding a small leather binder. No, Naliah breathed. No, we're not doing this. Cashin leaned close, his voice trembling for the first time since she'd met him. "You have no idea what's at stake," he whispered, his words brushing her ear like a warning. "If I could spare you from this, I would. If I had another way, I'd take it. But I don't. Please, trust me." She didn't trust him. She trusted her fear, her pounding heart, the icy dread crawling up her spine. But the guards closed the doors behind them, trapping her inside the grand hall that had been rearranged since she last saw it, now resembling a real wedding altar. The officiant opened his binder. "We may begin." Naliah shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. "This isn't real. This isn't happening." Cashin's voice cracked when he whispered, "I'm sorry." "Do you?" "Cashin Rourke," the officiant began. "Take Naliah Benton." "Stop," she cried. "I don't agree to this." But the officiant didn't stop. The guards didn't move. And Cashin, broken and terrified, squeezed his eyes shut. To have and to hold. Her breath shattered. "From this day forward," Cashin whispered, "forgive me. For as long as you both shall live." Cashin's voice was barely audible. "I do." The officiant turned to her. "And do you, Naliah Benton?" She shook her head violently. "No, I don't. I never said." "Take Cashin Rourke." "No." His voice overrode hers, firm and final. "She does." Her scream tore through the hall. "Cashin." But it was too late. The officiant closed the binder with a soft, echoing snap. "By the authority vested in me," he announced, "this marriage is now official." Naliah didn't remember being let out of the hall. Everything blurred, the chandelier lights, the murmuring guests, the guards surrounding her like a moving wall. Her legs felt detached from her body, her mind spinning so fast she couldn't hold onto a single thought. A wedding. A real one. Official. Legal. Trapped. By the time they reached the private wing of the mansion, she tore her arm away from the guard escorting her. "Don't touch me," she snapped, voice shaking. The guard stepped back immediately. Even he looked uneasy. Cashin approached slowly, his expression tight, with a guilt so heavy it made his features hollow. "Naliah," he said softly, "please let me explain. Stay away from me." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she meant every syllable. Cashin froze. The space between them felt like an invisible electric barrier, buzzing with fear and betrayal. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll keep my distance." He ran a shaky hand through his hair, the first sign she'd seen all day that he was unraveling. "Your room is prepared. You can lock the door from the inside. No one will bother you." "No one except you," she muttered. He flinched at that. "I won't come in," he promised. "Not unless you ask. Not unless you say it's okay." Naliah stared at him. He looked sincere. Broken even. But sincerity didn't erase what he'd done. It didn't undo the wedding dress clinging to her body or the paper she'd seen with her stolen signature. "You forced me into a marriage," she whispered, voice trembling. "Do you understand how insane that is?" He closed his eyes, pain tightening every muscle in his face. "I did it to protect you. I didn't ask for protection. You didn't know you needed it." She shook her head in disbelief. "That doesn't make any of this right." "I know," he whispered. "I know it doesn't." For a moment, they just stood there, two people joined by a legal bond that neither understood, both drowning in the consequences. "Why me?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a breath. "Out of every woman in the world, why me?" Cashin swallowed hard. "Because you were the only one I could trust." "That makes no sense." "It will," he said, "when I can tell you everything." Before she could respond, he stepped back again, giving her space. Too much space. As if moving any closer would shatter her completely. "Your room is down the hall," he said. "The first door on the right." She didn't thank him. She didn't say anything at all. Naliah walked away without looking back, every step echoing like a strike of judgment. She entered the room, closed the door, and locked it with shaking fingers. Only then did she let herself collapse against the wall, sliding to the floor as tears finally broke free. She cried quietly, angry, confused tears that stung her eyes and soaked into the wedding dress she still wore because she didn't have the energy to take it off. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to make sense of a world that had flipped upside down in a single night. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time didn't matter. But when the tears slowed and silence settled, she heard something through the wall. A crash. Another. Then a furious, guttural sound, half scream, half groan. She crawled to her knees and pressed her ear against the wall. More crashing. More sharp, splintering impacts. Cashin's voice broke through, low, ragged, furious. Why wasn't this enough? Why did they keep pushing? The sound of something shattering echoed violently. Naliah's breath hitched. She stood, padded quietly to her door, and eased it open the tiniest bit. Down the hall, through the open doorway of his office, she saw Cashin, a storm of rage and despair, destroying everything he touched. Books ripped from shelves, glass breaking beneath his hands, papers flying like torn feathers. He wasn't cold. He wasn't controlled. He wasn't controlled. He was coming undone. And Naliah, hidden in the shadows, watched him fall apart piece by piece. Naliah didn't sleep that night. The sounds of Cashin's rage, the smashing, the yelling, the trembling of the walls, lingered in her mind long after they stopped. By morning, the mansion was eerily quiet, as if the chaos had been nothing more than a dream. But the papers on the hallway floor, splintered glass in his office, and the tight knot in her chest reminded her it had been real. She spent the early hours wandering the private wing, trying to make sense of her circumstances. The staff avoided her gaze entirely, as if acknowledging her presence might break some invisible rule. Each door she passed seemed to whisper a secret she wasn't meant to hear. Naliah had a growing sense that she had stepped into something far larger than herself. Eventually, she found herself back near Cashin's office. The door was closed now, but voices floated through the thin walls. One was Cashin's, calm but tense, and the other was sharper, insistent. She couldn't catch the words clearly at first, but phrases like, "he won't comply," and "the girl must not know" reached her ears. Her heart raced. Whoever he was speaking to sounded dangerous, but why would they involve her? She backed away instinctively, pressing her ear to the hallway wall as she pieced together what she could. When Cashin finally emerged, he looked different, less storm, more haunted. His eyes met hers with a quiet intensity that made her step back instinctively. "We need to talk," he said, voice low. "Now." Naliah shook her head, keeping her distance. "I don't want to talk. I don't want to be here." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair again. "I can't tell you everything yet. Not all of it. But you need to understand, someone is threatening both of us. Not because of me. Because of you. Because of this marriage." Her stomach lurched. "Threatening us? Who?" Cashin didn't answer. He shook his head, his jaw tight. "You're in danger. I married you legally because it's the only way to protect you from them. The board, they're corrupt. They're ruthless. And they have eyes everywhere." Naliah felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. Legal marriage as protection? She didn't know whether to be terrified or furious, or both. Before she could respond, a sudden metallic click echoed in her room. She spun around, heart hammering in her chest. The door handle rattled violently. Someone was trying to break in. Her first instinct was to scream, but her voice froze in her throat. She backed into the corner, eyes darting for anything she could use to defend herself. Her mind raced, connecting Cashin's cryptic warnings to this very moment. The lock held, but the rattling continued, stronger now. Whoever it was had tools or strength, or both. Cashin appeared at the doorway without a sound, his presence both terrifying and comforting all at once. He assessed the situation in a heartbeat, then gently, but firmly, took her arm. "You're not safe here alone," he whispered. "Stay behind me. Whatever they want, they won't get it tonight." Naliah's chest tightened, panic and adrenaline mixing into a storm she couldn't control. The sound of footsteps on the other side of the door grew louder, heavier, deliberate. And then a shadow appeared in the hallway outside, creeping closer, unseen but unmistakably real. Her heart jumped. She realized this was only the beginning. Naliah barely had time to catch her breath before chaos hit the halls. Cashin moved like a predator, scanning the mansion for the source of the break-in, his tall frame a shield between her and the unknown threat. But even with him there, the danger felt impossibly close, almost breathing down her neck. "Who is this?" she demanded, clutching the edge of his arm. "Why are they after us?" Cashin's jaw tightened. "It's not just anyone. It's someone who wants everything I've built, and sees you as a key to getting it." The words barely registered before the mansion's alarm screamed, red lights flashing across the polished floors. Security personnel ran past, shouting into radios. But the intruder, or intruders, weren't inside the mansion. Cashin froze, listening intently. "They're outside," he muttered. "And they know exactly where you are." Naliah's stomach dropped. "Outside? How do they?" Before she could finish, the front doors burst open, and a tall man in a tailored suit strode in, confidence radiating from him like a weapon. His sharp, calculating eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. "Ah," he said smoothly, almost amused. "There she is, the bride." Cashin's hand tightened on her arm. "Adrian Vale," he said through gritted teeth. "He's not just a rival executive. He's been waiting for a chance to destroy me. And you're the perfect leverage." Adrian smirked, tilting his head slightly as if mocking both of them. "I've been patient, Cashin. Too patient. You've built a fortress around yourself, but even fortresses have cracks. And this little lady," he said, stepping closer to Naliah, "is exactly the kind of crack I can exploit." Naliah stepped back instinctively, the legal documents from the wedding still clutched in her trembling hands. "You can't, this marriage," Adrian laughed softly. "Oh, I can. And I will. That certificate means nothing to me. To me, it's a tool. And tools are meant to be used." Cashin's eyes flared, but he didn't strike. He simply braced himself, shielding her as the man circled slowly. The tension between them crackled like electricity. "Step aside, Rourke," Adrian said, voice low and dangerous. "She's coming with me, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Before Naliah could react, two men appeared behind her, fast and strong, grabbing her arms. She struggled violently, screaming, but the strength of her captors was overwhelming. Cashin lunged forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Naliah, don't let them." But it was too late. Adrian's smug smile never faltered as he stepped toward her, hand extended in a mock gesture of civility. "Come quietly, or things will get unpleasant." Naliah's chest heaved. Panic surged through her like a wildfire. She kicked and twisted, but the men's grip was iron. In seconds, she was being pulled toward the front doors, past the sprawling driveway, and the black armored vehicles waiting outside. Cashin tried to follow, but the guards formed a barrier, preventing him from moving any closer. Naliah's heart pounded in her ears. Fear, rage, and disbelief collided inside her. She had been thrust into a world she didn't understand, a world of power, greed, and cruelty, and now she was entirely at the mercy of the man who wanted her as a pawn. And as the gates of the Rourke estate closed behind her, Naliah realized with icy certainty, this was only the beginning. The black SUV sped down the highway, tires screeching against wet asphalt. Naliah's hands were bound, her body pressed uncomfortably against the leather seat as Adrian Vale sat opposite her, a cold, triumphant smirk on his face. The city lights blurred past the windows, and with each passing second, her fear deepened. She had no idea where they were going, or if anyone would come for her. "You're quiet," Adrian said, leaning back in his seat. "Not much of a fighter, are you?" "I expected more screams, more struggle." Naliah glared at him, chest heaving. "I'm not yours to take, and you'll regret this." Adrian chuckled, but the sound was sharp, edged with malice. "Oh, I'm counting on it." Suddenly, the vehicle swerved violently, throwing her against the door. Naliah screamed, and Adrian cursed under his breath. Through the rear window, she saw a black car cutting them off, matching their speed. Cashin. Her heart jumped, relief mixing with panic. But there was no time to breathe. Adrian reacted instantly, slamming on the brakes and swerving the SUV onto a side street. Naliah's seatbelt didn't hold her fully, and she hit the window, dazed, as glass rattled under the sudden stop. The black car pulled alongside them, and Cashin leaned out, aiming a gun with practiced precision. The sound of shots cracked through the night air, shattering Naliah's sense of safety. Tires screeched, glass shattered, and adrenaline surged through her veins. "Hold on," Cashin shouted, his voice cutting over the chaos. The two vehicles careened through narrow streets, Adrian's men firing back. Naliah ducked instinctively as bullets pinged off metal, the world around her a blur of lights and sounds. Every second stretched painfully. She could barely think, barely breathe, just survive. Then, Cashin's black car rammed the SUV from the side, forcing it to spin out of control. Naliah was thrown forward, the restraints digging painfully into her wrists. Adrian cursed, trying to wrestle control, but the car skidded and slammed into the curb. Before she could react, Cashin was beside her, gun raised. "Naliah, get out now." She tried to move, but the men behind her lunged to restrain her. Cashin fired, a sharp crack echoing in the night, and two of them dropped to the ground. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward him. "Go," he shouted, but before they could reach safety, a gunshot rang out. Pain exploded across Cashin's side, and he stumbled forward, his grip on her faltering. "No!" Naliah screamed, catching him as he fell, blood seeping through his shirt. He pressed a hand to the wound, his eyes wide and terrified, yet still burning with determination. "Go now? You can't stay, don't let them win." Her hands shook as she tried to drag him behind cover, the fear in her chest clawing at her. Cashin's other hand reached for hers, gripping it with a strength that belied his injury. "I can't leave you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You have to," he gasped, blood staining his voice. "If you survive, if you fight, you'll stop them. But not if you stay here with me." Her vision blurred, the sirens of approaching law enforcement mingling with the sounds of the gunfight. Cashin's breathing was shallow, uneven, and the fear in his eyes mirrored her own. And then another gunshot rang out. She felt it more than heard it, a thud of pain that made her knees buckle. Cashin Rourke, the untouchable, the powerful, the man who had forced a wedding on her, had been shot protecting her. Naliah's scream tore through the night as she held him, the world collapsing around them in chaos, blood, and fear. She had survived this far, but the fight was far from over. The sterile white walls of the hospital room felt unreal, cold, and suffocating. Naliah sat in the chair beside Cashin's bed, gripping his hand so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Monitors beeped rhythmically, tracking his pulse and breathing. Every sound seemed amplified, the hiss of oxygen, the distant footsteps of nurses, the muted voices of doctors moving down the hallway. He was pale, too still, and every time his chest rose or fell, it sent a jolt through her body. She had watched him face the enemy, face danger, face death, and now here he was, vulnerable and dependent on her. The roles had shifted so suddenly that she barely recognized herself anymore. Outside the room, reporters swarmed the hospital entrance. Their flashes, their whispers, their relentless cameras pressed against the glass like they were hungry for a story, for scandal. Naliah had already read the headlines on her phone. Fake bride, real CEO drama, woman tied to billionaire marriage fraud, mystery maid or manipulative pawn. Each title stabbed her chest, making her stomach turn. "She's a fraud," one headline said. Another called her a gold digger, even though she hadn't wanted any of this. She hadn't chosen this life, this marriage, this danger. And yet, the world was ready to blame her. Naliah's hand shook as she pressed it against his. "I'm here," she whispered, voice barely audible over the soft beeping. "You're not alone." Cashin's fingers twitched slightly. She leaned closer. The scars on his hands, the bandages across his side, they didn't scare her. They made her heart ache. This man, so powerful and unflinching to the world, had risked everything for her. And now she had nothing to offer but her presence, her voice, her quiet defiance against the outside world. The nurse checked his vitals again, adjusting the four. "He's stable, but he's still critical," she said gently. "Just keep talking to him." Familiar voices help. Naliah nodded, though her throat felt raw. She couldn't leave. Not now. Not ever. Hours passed in a slow, heavy rhythm. The world outside continued its chaos, but in this small room, time was a slow, suffocating stretch. Naliah's mind wandered to every moment since the mansion, the wedding, Adrian Vale, the shooting, the chase, and the pain of what had happened collided with the fear that she might lose him. Her tears had dried, but the ache remained, lodged in her chest like a stone. She whispered stories of their brief conversations, of small memories that made her smile before this nightmare began. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's words, about the life she had fought to survive. And then, just as the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, just as she bent over, whispering another promise that she would protect him no matter what, his eyes fluttered open. A faint groan escaped his lips, weak but real. His fingers twitched against hers, and the world seemed to tilt. "Naliah," he whispered, voice barely audible, raw and broken. She froze, tears streaming freely again. His eyes focused on hers, and she felt the gravity of everything. The danger, the fear, the betrayal, dissolve, if only for a moment, in the fragile sound of her name leaving his lips. "I'm here," she whispered back, squeezing his hand tighter. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in what felt like forever, the room seemed just a little less cold. Cashin's recovery was slow, each breath a reminder of the violence they had escaped, and each movement a battle against the weakness still clinging to his body. Naliah stayed by his side, never leaving, her presence a quiet anchor in the sterile hospital room. It was during one of these long, tense mornings that he finally began to explain the truth behind the wedding, behind the danger, behind everything she still didn't understand. "I didn't force you because I wanted to," Cashin began, voice raspy from pain. "I did it to save you." Naliah blinked, confusion and anger swirling together. "Save me from what? You've already risked my life. I've been shot, kidnapped, and you think marrying me makes any of this right?" Cashin closed his eyes briefly. "I know it's hard to believe, but the board, the very people who built my company, they're corrupt. They saw you as leverage. They wanted you trapped, manipulated, to force my compliance. And when I realized they'd use any legal connection to control me, I did what I had to do." Her stomach twisted. "They wanted to use me?" "Yes," he admitted. "They intended to ruin you, to make you an instrument in their scheme. I couldn't let that happen. So I made it official, legally binding. I put us together to protect you, because legally, they couldn't touch you if we were married." Naliah's chest tightened, the weight of understanding pressing down on her. The wedding, the dress, the papers, the ceremony. It had all been a shield, a desperate act of protection she hadn't asked for, couldn't have understood. But it also explained the fear in his eyes, the desperation in his hands, the way he had risked everything to get her out of Adrian Vale's reach. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to tell him how terrifying it had all been. But she also wanted to collapse into him and cry, to let herself feel the relief, the gratitude, the heartbreak all at once. "He married me, to protect me?" Her voice cracked. "Yes," he whispered, "and I would do it 1,000 times over. You weren't just a pawn to me. His lips trembled. "You're the reason I could fight, the reason I survived the board's schemes." Before Naliah could respond, the hospital phone rang sharply. Cashin motioned for her to answer it. "Mr. Rourke?" The voice on the line said urgently. "The board, the vote just concluded. They've decided to remove you as CEO. Effective immediately." Cashin's jaw tightened, and he leaned back. Exhaustion and frustration etched across his features. They did it. They voted unanimously," the caller confirmed. "You have 24 hours to step down." Naliah's heart sank. "Cashin," she said, grasping his hand. "I know you married me to protect me, but now what happens next?" He looked at her, eyes burning with fierce determination and raw vulnerability. "We survive. We fight. I may have lost the board, but I haven't lost us, and I won't let them hurt you again." The weight of the world pressed down on them both, heavy and unrelenting. And yet, in that hospital room, surrounded by monitors and sterile walls, they shared a fragile, unspoken truth. Whatever storms awaited, they were now bound together, by law, by trust, and by the courage to face the world side by side. Outside the room, somewhere far above the city, the board celebrated a victory they didn't realize had already slipped through their fingers. Inside, Naliah gripped Cashin's hand and whispered, "Then we fight, together." He nodded, a ghost of a smile breaking through his pain. Together. The press conference had been arranged hastily, but Naliah insisted on standing at the podium herself. Cashin had wanted to shield her, to protect her from the glare of cameras and microphones, but she refused. She had spent years being unseen, underestimated, overlooked, and now, finally, she had a voice. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting her stomach. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing in rapid succession. "My name is Naliah Benton. I'm 24 years old, and I've been through a situation that has changed my life forever." She paused, letting her eyes sweep the room. Every journalist, every camera, every note-taker felt like they were trying to pin her down, strip away the humanity behind her story. But she pressed on. "I was hired as a maid," she continued, "and through no fault of my own, I became the center of a situation that could have destroyed me. I have been portrayed as a fraud, as someone seeking fame or fortune. But the truth is far more complicated and far more real. The microphones buzzed. The flashes continued. Naliah felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, but she squared her jaw. She had survived far worse. I want to speak honestly about what's often hidden in our society: racism, classism, and the ways people in positions of power can exploit those they perceive as less. I am a Black woman, a daughter of a mother who worked tirelessly to give her children a chance at life. I know what it means to be underestimated. I know what it means to be treated as less than human. And that is exactly what nearly happened to me. She felt a tremor in her hands, but she ignored it. I was forced into a situation that was terrifying. I was in danger, but I also learned something powerful. My voice matters. My presence matters. And I refuse to be silent about injustice, no matter how wealthy or influential those who attempt to silence me may be. For a moment, the room was quiet. Cameras clicked in stunned pause. Some reporters scribbled furiously, trying to capture the courage in her words. And then, the backlash began. The first tweets hit immediately, flooding social media with ridicule, disbelief, and hostility. Headlines twisted her words into attacks. Black maid claims CEO marriage was protective. Scandal ensues. Naliah Benton's story. Lies or exploitation? Comments poured in like a flood of venom. Threats, insults, and demands for her silence filled every platform. Even as she spoke truthfully, her bravery became ammunition for those who wanted to see her silenced. The words she had fought to speak now seemed to trap her in a cage of public judgment. Naliah's jaw tightened. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to tremble. She knew this was part of the fight, that courage didn't always come with applause, that the world often tried to punish those who dared to speak truth. And yet, as she glanced to the side, she saw Cashin standing quietly, still pale from his injuries, but watching her with an intensity that made her heart steady. She exhaled slowly and lifted her chin higher. Threats and ridicule could not undo her story, her reality, or her power. For the first time, she understood. This was no longer about being protected. This was her turn to fight, and she wouldn't back down. But outside, the world was already turning against her. The mansion had grown too dangerous to stay in. The board was relentless, Adrian Vale still hunting her, and reporters had made it impossible for Naliah to appear in public without scrutiny or threat. Cashin, still recovering but determined, insisted they leave the city entirely, disappear until they could strategize. Naliah hesitated at first, fear tightening her chest. Disappear? You mean like criminals? Cashin shook his head, voice calm but urgent. No, not criminals. Survivors. We need to vanish long enough to regroup and protect ourselves. It's the only way. She studied him, noticing the fatigue etched into his pale face, the bruises fading but still present. And yet, despite it all, there was a fierceness in his eyes, the same intensity that had made her believe he could protect her the night she was kidnapped. They moved quickly, slipping through back hallways and service doors. Guards and staff who had once looked at her like a fragile piece of glass now guided them silently, some with worried glances, others with the quiet resignation of people used to following Cashin's orders. Finally, they reached the garage. The car waited, a sleek black SUV, tinted windows, engine humming like a coiled spring. Naliah slid into the passenger seat, heart pounding. Cashin joined her, his hand brushing hers as he closed the door. For the first time since the wedding, since the shooting, since the chaos began, they were alone. No mansion, no staff, no intruding reporters. Just the two of them. Cashin glanced at her, eyes softening. I know this isn't easy, and I know I've made everything worse at times. Naliah looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his tone. You married me, risked your life, and saved me countless times, she said quietly. If anyone's made this harder, it's the people who hunted us. Not you. He let out a shaky breath, leaning back in his seat. I never wanted you to see that side of me. The fear, the weakness. I wanted to be strong for you, to protect you completely. She reached over, covering his hand with hers. You were always strong, Cashin. Strong in ways I didn't understand until now. And you're human. You can be scared. You can falter. But you fight. That's strength too. For a moment, the world outside faded. The tension, the danger, The threats, they all felt distant, almost manageable. They shared a rare silence, the unspoken connection between them stronger than words. The SUV slipped onto a quiet road, headlights cutting through the darkness, tires soft against the wet pavement. Freedom, for the first time in days, seemed possible. Then, the rearview mirror reflected a line of black SUVs, at least 3, closing in from behind. Cashin's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. They found us. Naliah's stomach twisted. How? Doesn't matter, he said, voice low but sharp. We don't have much time. The road ahead stretched like a narrow thread into the unknown. They were out, but not safe. Not yet. The getaway they had planned so carefully was about to become a high-stakes chase. And in the dark, with danger closing in from all sides, Naliah realized this was the moment they would either survive together or be captured and destroyed. The SUV skidded violently as Cashin swerved to avoid the first pursuing vehicle. Naliah clutched the edge of the seat, knuckles white, heart hammering. Each moment brought them closer to freedom or death. Tires squealed, metal scraped against asphalt, and the air was thick with the scent of burning rubber and fear. We won't make it, Naliah gasped, panic clawing at her throat. They'll catch us. Cashin's jaw was set, eyes sharp and calculating. Hold on. We can. We just need a few minutes to. A flash of light blinded them, a spotlight from one of the pursuing SUVs, and Cashin cursed under his breath. Another vehicle slammed into their side, forcing them off the road. The SUV skidded into a ditch, throwing both of them against their seatbelts. Before they could recover, masked men surrounded the car. Guns were drawn, voices sharp and commanding. Naliah froze, fear rooting her to the spot as Cashin raised his hands slowly. They've got us, he whispered, voice tight with frustration. Stay calm. Don't make any sudden moves. Naliah shook her head, trembling. I can't do this. I can't. Cashin's hand found hers through the small gap between seat and door. His touch was warm, steady. Listen to me, he said, his voice low, urgent. I won't let them hurt you. I won't. The masked men yanked open the doors. Naliah tried to resist, but her strength was no match for theirs. Cashin struggled beside her, fighting with a desperate intensity that left him bruised and bleeding. And then, as they were dragged into the waiting vehicles, something unexpected happened. Cashin leaned close to her, his forehead brushing hers, his voice a hoarse whisper over the roar of engines and shouting guards. Naliah, I have to tell you something, he said, eyes locked on hers. I didn't just marry you to protect you. I fell in love with you long before this, long before any of it began. From the first moment I saw you at the mansion, when you were just a maid, when you didn't even know me, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I tried to ignore it. I tried to be professional, but I couldn't. And I still feel it. I always will. Naliah's breath caught. Her chest tightened with a mixture of fear, disbelief, and something tender that she hadn't dared to feel before. Words faltered on her lips as the reality of his confession sank in. She began, but a harsh shove from one of the men cut her off. The vehicle split them up. Naliah was pulled into a separate SUV, Cashin into another, both of them restrained and shouting futile protests. She caught his eyes one last time before the door slammed, the glare of headlights and city lights blinding her. Hold on to me, he called out, voice carrying through the chaos. No matter what happens, hold on. The SUV's engine roared to life, and Naliah was driven away to an unknown facility, her heart still pounding from the fear and the confession. Her mind spun with questions, doubts, and the fragile, terrifying hope that the man she had begun to trust, and perhaps even care for, would survive this. And as the vehicle disappeared into the night, she realized the fight wasn't over, but the stakes had never been higher. The room was cold, sterile, and empty except for a single metal chair bolted to the floor. Naliah's wrists burned from the restraints, her body cramped from hours of sitting in the harsh light that never dimmed. Every sound, footsteps in the hallway, the click of a lock, the distant hum of machinery, echoed through her skull like a reminder that she was trapped. She pressed her forehead to the wall, tears stinging her eyes. Her chest ached with exhaustion, fear, and despair. She thought of Cashin, alone in another facility, vulnerable, and possibly bleeding from injuries he'd suffered during their capture. And she hated herself for feeling powerless. "I can't do this," she whispered to herself. "I can't fight anymore. I can't survive this. I'm done." The memories pressed in. Her mother working double shifts just to keep food on the table, her sisters sleeping on worn mattresses while she learned to steal moments of hope wherever she could, the relentless taunts at school and in neighborhoods where opportunities were scarce. She had survived poverty, prejudice, and dismissal, and yet here, in a room meant to strip her of agency, she almost gave up. Her lips trembled. Why did it have to be me? But then, a small memory flickered through her mind. Her mother's voice, firm and unwavering, even in exhaustion. "Naliah, no one can take your spirit unless you let them. Stand up, always. Even if you're shaking, even if your hands are empty." Her heartbeat quickened. Her chest, heavy with despair, began to rise with determination. She wasn't powerless, not really. She had survived every obstacle thrown at her in life. She had fought for herself countless times, even when the world told her she didn't matter. She shifted her weight, testing the restraints. They were old, metal, and slightly rusted. She wiggled her fingers, twisted her wrists, and felt the tiny give in the chains. One careful movement, one breath, one chance, and she could escape. The door clicked in the hallway. A guard approached, keys jangling, likely checking the locks or bringing her minimal food. Naliah held her breath, counting each step in her head. As he unlocked the door to leave, she twisted sharply, wrenching her arms free with a grunt of effort. The guard shouted, but before he could react, Naliah grabbed the heavy metal chair, swung it with all her strength, and knocked him backward. She bolted down the hallway, heart pounding in her ears, adrenaline surging like fire through her veins. The corridors were a maze, but she had memorized enough during the hours she'd spent trapped to find the exit. Each turn brought her closer to freedom, closer to air that didn't feel like a cage. She pressed herself against walls, avoided cameras, and finally reached a side door marked exit. It gave under her push. Outside, the night air hit her like a wave, cold and real, filled with life and possibility. She collapsed to her knees briefly, inhaling deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in what felt like forever. Naliah rose, shaking but unbroken. Every ounce of fear, every tear, every moment of despair fueled her resolve. She wouldn't just survive. She would fight. And tonight, she had taken her first step toward doing exactly that. But she knew one thing with certainty. Cashin was still out there, and she would find him. The night was silent, but for the first time, Naliah felt the quiet hum of hope. The city lights blurred past Naliah as she moved through the streets, careful to avoid cameras and anyone who might recognize her. Her body ached from the escape, but her mind was singularly focused. Find Cashin. She had survived the facility, but he had survived too, and she wouldn't rest until she was sure of him. She finally found him in a small, nondescript office building on the outskirts of town. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, the dim light reflected off polished wood and stacks of papers. Cashin sat at a desk, his posture rigid, his face tense as he signed documents. Her heart caught in her throat. The papers were official-looking, legal documents. Divorce papers, she realized with a pang. His hand shook as he scribbled his signature, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and fear. He had been planning to release her from the marriage, to protect her again, even from himself. Naliah's chest tightened. She had imagined this moment countless times. Reunion, relief, apologies. But seeing him about to erase their bond was something else entirely. Her voice trembled as she called softly, "Cashin." He froze, pen hovering over the page. His eyes widened as he saw her standing in the doorway. Relief flashed, but it was quickly replaced by guilt. "Naliah, you shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous." She stepped closer, ignoring the tremor in her legs. "Dangerous? You think leaving me alone in that facility was safer? Or letting them control you, control us, was better?" Cashin's jaw tightened. "I can't risk them finding you. Signing these papers, it's the only way to keep you safe. If we remain married, they'll hunt us together. I can't let that happen." Naliah shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "Cashin, listen. I don't care about their threats. I don't care about the board. I survived because I refused to be their pawn. And I won't let you make me a ghost in my own life. He lowered the pen slightly, looking down at the papers with a conflicted expression. I thought this was the only way. I thought. You thought you could protect me by giving me up, she interrupted, stepping closer until she was beside him. Her hand touched his, and the warmth of it grounded her. But I don't want protection at the cost of my choice. I choose you, Cashin. Not because you saved me, not because you married me to keep me alive, but because I love you, and I want to fight this with you. His hand froze under hers. His eyes, already tired and haunted, softened in a way that made her chest ache. The pen slipped from his fingers, clattering softly against the desk. Naliah, he whispered, voice barely audible. You mean that? She nodded, squeezing his hand. I choose you. Now and always. No more running, no more hiding. Cashin's breath caught. He looked at her, truly looked, for the first time in weeks. A slow, fragile smile began to form, breaking through the exhaustion and fear. He leaned forward, placing his forehead gently against hers. Then, we fight together. No matter what. Naliah smiled through her tears. Together. And for the first time in what felt like forever, hope didn't feel like a fragile thread. It felt like fire, fierce and unyielding, burning brightly between them. Naliah and Cashin arrived at the board's downtown skyscraper under the cover of early morning fog, tension radiating between them. They weren't just two survivors anymore. They were a team, driven by purpose and the fire of justice. Naliah clutched a folder tightly, papers inside detailing everything. Forged documents, threats, surveillance footage, and most importantly, the marriage certificate. This is it, Cashin whispered, voice low but steady. Everything we need to bring them down. Naliah nodded. Her hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. They tried to use me as leverage. Now we turn it against them. The lobby was quiet, almost eerily so. Security cameras tracked their movement, but Naliah had already anticipated that. She kept her eyes on the elevators, counting each guard silently. We split, she said. You go to the boardroom. I'll handle the digital access points. Cashin hesitated. Are you sure? It's dangerous. She cut him off with a firm nod. I survived worse than this. We're doing this together. Just trust me. The elevator ride up felt like an eternity, every floor a countdown to confrontation. When the doors opened, the board members were already gathered, smug expressions on their faces, unaware that the people they had underestimated, the maid, the bride, the woman they thought was powerless, had arrived to take them down. Cashin, the lead board member sneered. I thought we agreed this situation would be handled quietly. Cashin stepped forward, hand tightly gripping Naliah's. No more quietly, he said. It's over. Naliah stepped beside him, holding up the folder like a shield. Every threat you made, every illegal move you orchestrated, every attempt to manipulate and control, it's all documented. And here's the proof. The room shifted uncomfortably as Naliah laid out the evidence. Emails, recordings, financial manipulations, and the centerpiece, the marriage certificate that had protected her from their schemes and exposed the very conspiracy they had tried to hide. You can't, one of the men stammered, eyes wide. I can, Naliah said firmly. Because this certificate proves your attempts to exploit me and manipulate Cashin legally and financially. You're finished. Cashin glanced at her, eyes filled with pride and awe. Let's finish this. As the board members scrambled, shouts rising, Naliah pressed a button on her phone. Instantly, red and blue lights flooded the boardroom as police officers stormed the room, weapons drawn, cuffing the stunned executives. Naliah's chest heaved, but she held her ground, refusing to let fear or anger take over. Adrian Vale's name echoed through the room as the police closed in, and even he froze, realizing that his leverage, his power, and his schemes had crumbled entirely. Cashin leaned close to her, whispering, You did this. You stopped them. Naliah shook her head, smiling through her exhaustion. We did this. Together. The sound of sirens and handcuffs filled the air, triumphant and final. Naliah allowed herself a deep, steadying breath, feeling the weight of fear, pain, and chaos lift from her shoulders. The enemy was defeated. The conspirators were caught. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Naliah and Cashin could finally breathe. The fight wasn't over for good, but they had won this battle. Outside, the city was waking, unaware that justice had just been served, and two unlikely heroes stood at the heart of it, unbroken, united, and ready for whatever came next. The courtroom-like tension of the boardroom had dissipated, leaving only quiet murmurs of officers processing the arrested executives. Naliah and Cashin stood side by side, bruised but unbroken, their hands entwined. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a warmth that was entirely theirs, a fragile, powerful sense of victory. But even in victory, danger lingered. Adrian Vale, overlooked in the chaos, had slipped toward the rear exit, a determined glint in his eyes. Naliah's instinct screamed. Without thinking, she pushed past Cashin, running faster than she had thought possible. "Stop!" she shouted. Her voice carried authority she had only begun to discover in herself. Adrian froze for a moment, eyes wide, but Naliah was faster. She grabbed his arm, twisting and forcing him down to the floor with a controlled strength that shocked even her. "No more running," she said firmly. "No more lies. You're done." The officers behind her moved in to take him into custody. She straightened, chest heaving, feeling a mix of triumph and disbelief. She had stopped him, herself, without waiting for anyone to save her. Cashin approached, still bruised and weary, but there was an awe in his eyes as he looked at her. You did that," he whispered. "I did what had to be done," Naliah replied, voice steady. "We're done being pawns." He smiled, tired but genuine, and took her hands in his. "Then let's be done with all of this. I'm giving it all up. The company, the mansion, the power. None of it matters if I lose this life with you." Naliah's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely," he said softly. "I don't need it. I want a life where we aren't running, hiding, or fighting constant battles. Just us, building something real, together." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with hope. For the first time, she felt the weight of their shared freedom, a future they could shape together. Weeks later, they moved to a quiet coastal town, a small house with a garden, a place where they could wake to the sun and hear the waves instead of alarms and sirens. Naliah planted flowers, Cashin helped paint the walls, and they laughed at the absurdity of their former lives. Power and wealth had been left behind, replaced by something infinitely more precious: choice, love, and peace. One morning, Naliah stood in the doorway, sunlight streaming across her face. She looked into the camera she had secretly kept recording, a YouTube-style video documenting her journey, the story she wanted the world to see. Her voice was steady, warm, and commanding. "Life will throw fear, injustice, and cruelty at you," she said, eyes locking with the lens, burning with sincerity. "But kindness, courage, and standing up for yourself, those are the tools that can change everything. Never underestimate the power you hold when you refuse to be a pawn. Choose yourself, choose love, and never, ever give up." She smiled, letting the words settle into the silence. Behind her, Cashin leaned against the doorway, smiling softly, his hand brushing hers. The screen faded to black, but her message lingered, an echo of hope, of bravery, and of a life reclaimed. Justice had been served. Love had survived, and Naliah Benton had emerged, unshakable, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, the human spirit could shine brighter than any shadow. Thank you for watching Naliah's journey. If her story of courage, love, and standing up for yourself inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Share this video to remind someone that even in the darkest times, bravery and kindness can change everything. Comment below, what would you fight for if your life depended on it?